if this data is not being used by the school, by the teacher, by the school principal, then expecting that those assessments are going to lead to some kind of massive change in the classroom practices is far-fetched.
Hello, my name is Pranav Kothari. I'm the CEO of Educational Initiatives. Our vision is to see a world where children are learning with understanding. We're trying to create more ranchos than silencers and do this by making assessments and an adaptive learning software called MindSpark. EI Dialogues was born of a desire to bring in-depth conversations with leaders who have made transformations in the education sector on the ground to decode the what, where, why, when, how did they manage to do this, lessons learned, and inspiration for some of us to continue on this journey. I hope you enjoy watching this, and we have about 30 more episodes that you can look for, both in video and in audio format. Today I have the pleasure of interacting with Shailendra Sharma, who has worked for almost 20 years with Pratham, and over the past 7 years is the principal advisor to the Director of Education in the government of Delhi. Shailendra, welcome to EI Dialogues, and I look forward to our conversation today.
Thanks, Pranav. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. Shailendra ji, you've had a very diverse career. Of course, all 25 years has been in the education sector, but you've chosen to work at different vantages. There are a lot of young people who are just entering this sector. If you could describe your career trajectory, some inflection points, and any advice that you have for people who are looking for a long-term career in this sector, that'd be great to hear.
So to begin with, Pranav, I don't think I chose this sector. Education chose me. So that's how it is. After graduating from TES, I never thought that I would be working in education sector. This happened by chance, because after graduating, I was exploring what exactly I would want to do. And in the course of exploration, I came across several organizations working in different parts of India. There was some learning, some takeaway from each one of them, till I reached Pratham. And in the first few months, I realized what the work that Pratham is doing is making sense to me, and I would want to spend more time. But even then, I had not decided that I am going to stay on in Pratham for so long. It was always like a 1 year or 2 year, and then I would be wanting to do something new. But within Pratham, I always got that opportunity to do something new always. And then in 2015, when the new government came to power in Delhi, they reached out. I was leading Pratham's work in Delhi at that point of time. So they reached out to Pratham seeking support in learning improvement. There was some pilot project which they were launching. Because I happened to be there, and I was doing work for Pratham there. So I started engaging. And in the course of that engagement, at some point of time, the offer came from the side of the government that I should have more formal role in the education department of the Delhi government, and that is how the journey, it took a different trajectory thereafter.
So what's the secret sauce of engaging with the government? आप कैसे करते हैं, क्या करते हैं, किसके साथ? Like, how do you sort of make sure that it's symbiotically beneficial?
There's no formula or recipe for that. See, at the end of the day, Pranav, all of us are part of the same cultural milieu. So one of the key thing is that engaging with the people in government, what I felt was that you don't have to come with some assumptions. So talking to them, understanding what their concerns is, what the challenges they have, helps always to design and find a common ground. So I think engagement, talking, and developing a program along as we go along, that has been an important component of engagement, I suppose.
So what you would do is you would normally ask the government on sort of what's going well, what are their fears or keeping them up at night, or what improvements they want to make. Try to deeply understand unke man mein kya hai, what plans and strategies they are thinking, and then sort of overlapping with what maybe you are thinking or you are specialist in. But identifying the problem and co-creating solutions is the way to sort of engage with the government better.
So let me give you one example. When way back in 2001, when I joined, we had one program called Bridge Course, where children who were out of school, and that was the time when Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan was not launched yet. And Pratham had massive out of school programs where children below 14 years who were out of schools were identified, convinced to come to communities classes. We would have those classes in the communities. And during summer breaks, when there's summer vacations, we would talk to municipal corporation and request them to allow us to use the school building to conduct our bridge classes. And when the schools would reopen, we would admit those children in the same school. So that was the thing. So in a sense, it kind of say helped government teachers and government school system that somebody is working, preparing the children before these children land up in a school.
Very interesting.
So that's how they found that there is a support coming. I'm not coming here with a project to be add-on for what they are doing. In fact, it's a supportive thing. And then over a period of time, we also realized, okay, we have put the children in a school, and after a couple of months, some of them disappear. So what happens to them? Where do they go? And why do they go? And then the whole cycle of conducting again one round of bridge class. And that led us to think why children are dropping out after a while. And we realized that many children would not make sense. Suppose you admitted it was age appropriate, mainstreaming is not a recent phenomena. This has been going on. So if a 10-year-old child, we admitted the child in class 4 because that's the class in which she or he would be. But the child is not following what is happening in that class. So after a while, this child would stop coming. Many a time, the assumption would be, oh, this child must be working, or parents are not sending, or anything. But rarely, in those days, I am talking about 2 decades back, that somebody would look inward. Is there something wrong that we are doing in our class which is not making sense to this child? And the child is making a rational choice by withdrawing. So that understanding, when it came, we said, okay, can we like come to school also and support you through remedial classes? And that was a model of Bal Sakhi that we introduced. So school again found that there is a support coming from outside, which is basically enabling their own work to be done better. So that is how the partnership is strengthened. In that course, when we would see that the dropout rate is lowering, we would not jump to take the credit. We would basically attribute that success to the school teachers. And truly speaking, this would not be possible unless there is a partnership. So if the school is not supportive, this won't happen. So that spirit of partnership was what we cherished all the while, and that is how we went from one step to another.
And so how, in this journey, as you were constantly looking at learning levels, what kind of assessments did you use? What has been your experience in terms of the formats of the assessments, the purpose of the assessments, and what role have they played in improving learning?
So I'll give you a very interesting incident that happened with me on this subject matter. So again, as I said, when children drop out of the school, being a new person in an organization, you're given responsibility to go and find out. And I went to I was searching for one child who was not coming to school. And I went to this, located this person. He had lost his parents. His grandmother was raising him. And this grandmother had a very small shop in front of the school where she would sell toffees and stuff like that. And I asked the old lady that, Mataji, why don't you send this child to school? And I saw that child was sitting next to her. And she looked at me and she said, why should I send my child to school? I said, well, he will learn. So she said, but he is not learning. I asked, how do you know that she is not learning? She passed on one newspaper, which was, she had a lot of newspaper with her, which she would use to wrap things around while selling. She asked that child, just read. And this child could not. So this old lady, who herself could not read, asked her grandson to read for him. And this grandson, who was, I remember if correctly, he was in grade 5, couldn't read that. And that was her indicator to say that nothing is happening in the school, then why the hell should I send my child to school? And I thought that this is a very rational decision she's taking. And the assessment that she's using, till then the assert tool and all had not yet come. But a very simple way of her understanding whether my child is gaining anything in school or not. That was a big takeaway. Yeah. And that is how the subsequent assessment tools that we designed, we were very conscious that it has to be simple enough for every stakeholder to understand and make sense. And you can see the progress. So I told her while parting, okay, suppose if we come back a month later, give us 1 month time, and if your child can read, will you send him regularly? She said, of course. So that is how you can also change, also see the progress, track the progress, and build confidence.
Yeah, ultimately the purpose of education, of course, is larger, but at the base level, it has to be able to solve an everyday skill, which is to be able to read a newspaper or an unseen passage and comprehend it. And also, I guess maybe for that grandmother, if a customer came and gave a 100 rupee note and bought something, the child is giving the correct change back. So unless this education is helping the parent sort of see implemented in improving their daily lives, whatever they might be doing, the value of sending to a formal school system will not be there. And what role has, large-scale assessments played in enabling this to happen? I mean, because a lot of critique of assessments is that they are just assessing the learning levels of the child, but they are not sort of helping improve the learning or change the teaching or change outcomes in a manner. So how have you seen, assessments influence learning outcomes to increase as the end goal on this?
So if we ask this question to ourselves, who uses a particular assessment? Who uses that data? That will answer as to what change happens. If this data is not being used by the school, and let me decode that. If this data is not being used by the school, by the teacher, by the school principal, then expecting that those assessments are going to lead to some kind of massive change in the classroom practices is far-fetched. So large scale assessment, while it can give you a big picture as to what is happening, what is not happening, it can give policy directions probably, but per se the teachers and school principal do not see it to be adding value. So if you go and ask any school principal, okay, for your state or for your district, what is the latest NAS figure shows, I can bet that hardly anybody would be able to tell you. So down from the school teacher to the principal to the education officers. So what then happens is it becomes like an academic exercise to be done periodically and comment upon the overall health. Right. It doesn't. In fact, teachers take more seriously their own formative and summative assessment, their own term and examination. I'll give you an example of Delhi in that. While we all know that after right to education policy, this introduced no detention. So as a result, children can be automatically promoted up to grade 8 and beyond. That. But still, one of the branch which was responsible for conducting internal tests in the Directorate of Education, Government of Delhi, maintained the result of children from grade 3 to grade 8 onwards. And they would maintain that who are the children who are being promoted as a result of no detention policy and which are the ones who have passed on their own. And the teachers would look at that because that was their data. That was giving them a sense as to what my children are learning and what they are not learning. So if the data is simple enough and it can inform me about what is a takeaway for me, then probably it would be used. Large scale assessment sometimes, in fact most of the time, misses that point.
So your decision to switch from Pratham to being the advisor to the director in the government of Delhi, hard one, easy one?
I would say neither hard nor easy, a natural progression.
Okay.
Because as I said, right from the word start in Pratham, I have been engaging with the government in one form or the other, and that experience was quite handy. So when in 2015, 15, I started engaging with the government of Delhi on behalf of Pratham, with the project that we were doing with the government. That allowed me to understand the Delhi government school scenario from a more close quarter. Till then, in Delhi, I was working more closely with the municipal school system, and Delhi is a complicated space. Pranav, you won't believe there are 15 different entities which runs school system in Delhi.
Wow.
15, 1 5.
I was not aware of that.
So it's a very complex landscape. So as I said, despite working very closely with the government in Delhi, I was not confident that I know the Delhi school system well enough, because that was not my area. But this pilot project that we did in partnership with the government between 2015 and 16, that gave a good insight that, you see, in Delhi what happens is that children study in the primary schools which are largely run by municipal corporation, and all the municipal corporation schools are feeder school to Delhi government. So after grade 5, in grade 6, children would be joining Delhi government schools. And in grade 6, if you start doing any remedial work or catch up, it is very complicated, because in primary grades you have a same teacher teaching all the 4 subjects that the child is supposed to take. From 6th onwards, there would be subject specific teacher. So if a child has moved to grade 6 without being able to even read, whose responsibility that would be to get this skill acquired is not clear. Whether it would be the responsibility of the language teacher, well, language teacher would say, I have my own syllabus to complete. Then who else will take that responsibility? So I realized that it's a very complex question to answer. But when we did this pilot project, we were working with 3, 4, 5 children in the Sarvodaya School of Delhi government, which are composite schools where you have primary sections also, and then in 6th, 7th, 8th, which were upper primary schools. And we could see the difference in 3, 4, 5 with a certain nudge. Pratham's own teaching at the right level approach was working very well, but in 6th, 7th, 8th, it was not working that effectively. So therefore, it was needed that we have to have a program created to address this, because what was also happening, and that we discovered in 2016 when we looked at the data, almost half the children in Delhi government schools were failing in grade 9. And when we started talking to teachers and all, what is the issue, they would say, because they have not learnt anything. So they were promoted automatically up to grade 8 under no detention policy. And then in grade 9, when you have first exam which is going to determine whether the child is going to move to the next grade or not, almost half of them were flanking. And that was the time when I was offered by the then Deputy Chief Minister of Delhi that why don't you work closely with the department. And I was appointed as principal advisor to the Director of Education, and then from then onwards it has been a interesting journey.
Sir, since you joined this position formally in 2015, what are some of the highlights? What are 1 or 2 things you're most proud of, and why?
So we introduced something called Mentor Teachers program. Very interesting. SCRT, as you know, in every state conducts in-service training. So Delhi SCRT was also doing it. And we started taking feedback from the teachers as to what extent they found the trainings very effective. And we learned in the course of that feedback session that SCRT did not have any permanent cadre to conduct those trainings. They would be inviting faculties from Delhi University, from other universities, or any resource person to conduct those one-off training. And those trainings were conducted based upon the ability or the expertise of the resource person rather than the need of the teachers per se. And teachers after teacher gave the feedback that those are not very useful to them. They do it because they are mandated to do it, they are required to do it, but they don't find it very useful. And then when we sat down with SCRD and DIET to find a solution for that, there was where are we going to find resource person from for this? This is the model we have been practicing right from the days of Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan. How are we going to find a resource person other than the one who are we engaging with? And then in the course of those discussion, it emerged that why not use the expertise or the experience of some of the good teachers in the system itself. Because one of the key things that we have been doing right from the beginning was visiting schools very regularly, talking to teachers. And we have seen some of the classes where teachers were doing things on their own, very innovative. So we thought, let us tap that. And that is how the idea of a mentor-teacher program came about. We got about 2,000 applications in response to that, and we eventually picked up 200 of them, and that gave us a good cadre to not only design the in-service training module, keeping the needs of teacher in mind, but also go back to the schools and follow up. Because very often it happens that the teachers come for the training, something is absorbed, something is left, but when you go back to your class, you would find that okay, somebody could answer this question, somebody could support me there, and that is where the mentor teacher came in handy. So I think one of the first initiative, this mentor teacher program, is something which is very close to my heart.
And what I like about this initiative is it's from within the system.
Absolutely.
It's all the people who are already there. Some of them were working hard, burning the midnight oil, but now finally got the recognition. Sir, all of this sounds very rosy, like utopia. Like, is there a critique of this, or is there a wrinkle that you had to iron out? Is there something that didn't go as planned in this endeavor?
No, absolutely. Even mentor teacher program itself, that there were resistance, because some schools would say that you've taken my best teacher. Now as a result, my children are going to suffer. So it was like the interest of 20, 30 children versus the interest of the teacher. How are you going to balance that? Then there would be some complaint that okay, but mentor teachers are behaving like a boss. So those were challenges. Acceptance of mentor teacher also was a bit of challenge in the initial years. So I don't think it was an easy journey.
इसको कैसे टैकल किया सर आपने?
See, over a period of time, what happens is when you see the value of it, then you start accepting. And a lot of things was the behavior of mentor teachers themselves, that how quickly they adopted themselves in the role. And going to the school, offering themselves that I am not critiquing what you are teaching, but here is what I would suggest. If you want, you can take that. Even in some cases, mentor teachers would pick up certain topics that when they go to the school, with the permission of the concerned school principal, they would conduct those classes. They would demonstrate to the fellow teachers about how this thing can be done differently. So by way of active engagement and demonstration, they were able to win confidence of their fellow teachers in the schools.
So this ability to take resources from within the system, provide the opportunities to nurture and grow it, the ability to keep this organic, the ability to keep it new and refreshed all the time, is one sort of story that I've heard. Is there a second example that you're very proud of?
So this is the structural part. Now go to the functional part. That here is a ground we have laid to roll out any intervention that is required. We also realized that many children were not passing grade 9 in the government school system. And one of the reasons that we got to know was the poor foundational literacy and numeracy of children. Many children were not at the grade appropriate level. So we designed a program called Chunauti, by which in 2016 we gave a call that by 2018 we should be able to bring all children to the grade appropriate level. It was a mammoth exercise, and it required a lot of work, including say looking at the textbook itself. So we organized workshop of teachers facilitated by mentor teachers to look at their textbook CRT, because what was also happening was that, and this is the question we had to answer, that in grade 6 when the teachers themselves did the assessment, they found that 74% children in their class could not read a paragraph from their own textbook. Now, if that is a situation, how are you going to teach the syllabus which is prescribed for grade 6 onwards? So we designed, what we did was we requested the teachers to do a thorough assessment. We used the assert tool. We included one more level of testing in that tool, and as a result of it, the children who could not read a paragraph from their textbook were identified, and a targeted teaching learning activities started, beginning from the foundational literacy numeracy classes where teaching at the right level and tools were used, and then once the child reached the level of reading, then moving to the class syllabus. And for that, what we did was we even simplified the textbook, NCRT textbook. We created another series of books using the same titles as were there in the syllabus, which we called Pragati. So, for example, if you have a chapter on photosynthesis in class 6, the same photosynthesis would be explained in a very simpler manner in this Pragati series, along with a lot of exercises which the child is expected to do. The challenge was twofold. In the primary grade, you can have teaching at the right level straight away, and once you get the child to the desired reading level or the numeracy level, you can move to the regular syllabus.
And that's partly because grades 1 to 5 are usually taught, homogeneously by a class teacher, and her ability to divide the class into these is there.
In 6, 7, 8, the challenge is different, because you have subject-wise teachers, you have subject-wise textbooks, and those textbooks are also of a very high order. In fact, the assumptions behind creating those textbooks, I don't know who created that and what kind of assumption they have. The assumption was that the children are there to be able to use that, whereas still children were far behind that level. So what kind of bridging approach you are going to adopt in the interregnum? So even if you get the child to read, expecting that this child would be competent enough to follow the textbook of that 7th or 8th grade was very unrealistic. And that is why we did this prior preparation of creating a support series through Pragati before embarking upon the first step itself, because immediately after 2 to 3 months you would start needing that kind of support. So we did that.
So Pragati means progression in this particular context?
We named this booklet as Pragati, which means progress.
Sir, I hear you that, in Pragati, you calibrated these subjects of grades 7 and 8 to simpler forms that children could understand. But why take so much hassle? Wouldn't it just be simpler to group students based on their ability level, regardless of the age? I mean, is there a downside to this?
You're making a very radical suggestion, and you would get me lynched even for thinking so. Because when we did the grouping, even the grouping per se, a 7th grader sitting with the 7th grader, except that the one who is at the grade appropriate level would be in one group, and the other child who is not at the grade level appropriate, who requires support, would be in the other group. Even that was met with a lot of resistance and criticism, that we are playing havoc with the psyche of the child. We are lowering the self-esteem of the child by saying that you are not you cannot sit with your peers. So expecting the 7th grader to be sitting with 2nd grader was like a recipe of disaster. And that is not required also. Because you see, even if the child is unable to be at the grade level, the age of this child is different from the 2nd grader. So you can't be sitting with a 7-year-old child when you are yourself is 13 year. And secondly, even with that, there are certain vocabulary that the child has acquired, certain experience that this child has acquired. So those cannot be discounted. So a child in grade 7, whichever level you are, maybe in terms of reading you are a certain level, but in terms of other experiences and all, you would have a very different experience from a 2nd grader. So designing something which is at your level is very much required, and that could be anything other than the syllabus of that class 7. So that was an assumption behind doing this kind of a homework and creating multiple options for the schools.
So I understand that, at the 7th grade for the 13-year-old students, there are many different reasons why we want to keep them sort of grouped by age and keep the group homogeneous as a function of their age, right? But even for the world's best teacher to be able to then sort of take these 40 students who are at the equivalent of grade 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and perhaps a few bright kids who are ahead of grade 7, it just seems a pretty uphill, complex task for a teacher to be able to do. Has that been your experience, and how have teachers been able to handle such heterogeneous learning levels even when students are of, from a similar background, similar age, similar community?
So there are two situations here, and you are right. No teacher on earth can potentially deal with such a heterogeneous group, and that is why in Chunauti, when we did grouping, because we were in Delhi government, I cannot speak about all school education systems, but upper primary schools in Delhi are fairly big. We have many sections. So even when the grouping was done, we could have like different sections, though we faced criticism on that account also, but we created those different sections. So as a result, the children who were in a particular section, if they are not at the grade appropriate level, the teachers, they are fairly at a homogeneous level.
So and if I understand this correctly, let's say 7th grade has 7 A, B, C, D, then the A, B, C, D is a relative.
It was because you will have, say, only 20 children who are at the grade level, whereas 80 children who are, so you can't have a very clear-cut demarcation of sections, but in by and large,
on a relative basis,
was able to do that.
Yeah.
They could do that, and they could then go with the appropriate strategy over there. Once the child has acquired this skill, I'm not talking about competency or ability. I'm basically talking about skill. The skill to read his or her own textbook. Now, it is still possible that there is a child who feel very confident and comfortable in science class, but the same child doesn't feel comfortable in social science, or in science also with say physics part. So you will always have that kind of heterogeneity in class, but there are ways by which a good teacher can do that. The problem compounds when you also have a situation where the child cannot even read what is before that. So we were basically removing that handicap, and then after that you can always devise processes. You can bring more supportive material. You can give more ideas to the teacher. You can send them some certain videos to look at, that how this particular topic can be taught, so that children find it very interesting and learn. So that then the sky is the limit. Here what you are doing is the accumulated backlog of many years. You are trying to bridge. You are trying to bring those children who are perpetually getting left behind, just waiting to reach class 9th so that they can fail and then go out of the system, to somehow prevent that from happening, bring them closer to the level, so that at least they have the skill of reading and writing, and then the teacher's support will enable them to go further.
The way you've described this, to be able to provide every child at their ability level, grouping it, the text that is calibrated at their level, logically sounds, very interesting and plausible that this will have an impact. But when I put on my operational hat, this sounds complex to execute. What has been the lessons from the field? What has worked? What hasn't? If you could design a version 2, what changes would you bring in that?
So actually, Chunoti became Chunoti for ourselves only, and Chunoti 2018 is what we said. But till 2018, we ourselves struggled to convince the teachers and school system that this is a right approach and should they be doing groupings and all. So our assumption was that in 2 years we will be able to overcome this challenge, but it took us 2 years to actually get this idea itself implanted, and that was a big lesson that any pedagogical reform is not going to happen in a day just because you have on your dashboard figured out a very clear pathway. It took 2 years for the teachers also to appreciate and understand. And in 2018, we had to completely rehaul the whole thing. We concluded Chunauti and we launched a program called Mission Bunyad, which was essentially an outcome of the learning of the last 2 years, and that became a very focused intervention thereafter.
If teacher beliefs are so rigid and dogmatic, and not because they're bad human beings, it's just they're wired and they're practiced and they've had a vivid memory from the way they were educated, it almost feels like 2 years might not have been enough to make this change happen. What progress did you make between 2016 and 18 on this?
So as I said, 2016 to 2018 has been Chunauti for ourselves. Questions, argument, discussions, criticism, all this was happening. Many teachers were against. Basically, teachers were right in some sense by questioning this approach. And we like that. We always encourage that there's absolutely no need to accept everything which is being planned in the headquarters. As a teacher, as a living being, you are on the front line. So question, what's the problem? Their basic concern was that we are making these distinctions among children, which is going to play havoc with their self-esteem, that they are being labeled. But then we had to also counter argue that, but is it not the already prevailing situation when a child suddenly in grade 9 fails? And we had a situation where a lot of parents came and protested in front of a school where 70% children had failed. They said, till now my child was passing every year, and suddenly you come and say that my child cannot even pass. Whose fault is this? So somebody has to answer, you had this child for the last 8 years, maybe 10 years, and now you are saying that this child is not even capable of passing to the next grade. So we were like, here are these difficult choices. Nobody wants to make that kind of distinction, but do you have an option? If you have a better strategy, tell us, we will engage with that strategy, but we cannot left this situation to be unattended. But as I said, you can have a cognitive level discourse, but eventually things happen in a classroom only when the teachers actually believe in, no matter what you can do. And therefore, it was a journey worth undertaking with lot of turmoil, with lot of storm. And by 2018, because of the repeated engagement, many teachers started seeing the reason. They started trying it out.
No, thank you for sharing. I resonate with sort of how change behavior of anything sort of takes a lot of time, and sometimes you have to be blessed. Sometimes you have to continue the efforts of dialogue. And
persistence is the key. Yeah. If we had given up, and if we did not have the supportive government, this may have, because what you say in the government system, again with any new experiment, there's a shelf life for that. The tendency is to give up after 2 to 3 years. And 2 to 3 years, if you start from 2016, we were nowhere. This would have been dubbed as a complete failure. Yes. But why it continued? Because we kept coming back, until a point where they could start seeing a reason. And by that time also, I would say that in terms of alternate pedagogy, this was established that you had some alternate available to you. You knew that this is something that you can do. So that also made a difference, because otherwise if you say no, this is not working, but what exactly should be working? What exactly should I be doing as a teacher? If you are not clear about that, then we can have discussion, we can have conferences, but we cannot have the conferences discussion cannot replace classroom processes.
In summary, like over the last 7 years from 2016, how would you rate the efforts? What has worked? What hasn't? And as you look to the future, I mean, what are you thinking right now? What are you feeling right now?
Every new things that we introduce had its own set of challenge, had its own set of setbacks. But what was good about it was that we had mechanism to keep learning, and on the basis of those learning, keep improvising. So as with respect to mentor teachers, how it underwent the change. Similarly, Chunauti to Mission Bunyad, I mean, these were learning. And every discussion or every criticism was actually a question for us to reflect rather than react, and come up with a modified approach to a different approach. Another intervention I can cite, which is close to my heart, is the way we structured the school management committees. This is a statutory body. The law says that every school should have a school management committee. But in many states across India, even now, these are on papers. They don't exist on ground. That was the case in Delhi also. But what we realized early on, that unless you make parents a partner in the change process, you are just spending 6-7 hours in school. The rest of the time the child spends at home. So if you are not making parents a partner, then you are missing out an opportunity. And how do you do that? By bringing parents to school. Let us demystify this school building. Let them also feel that even if they have not gone to school, there is still that they can contribute in the learning of their children. So school management committee became that kind of a platform where parents came together. And also parents could help school in solving some of the problems. For example, I remember when we had this Chunauti and Mission Bunyad period, many school management committees also started conducting reading melas in the communities, in the schools, after school hours, on chuttis, on the weekends, during summer breaks. They will do that. We would have summer camps, which would be completely led by school management committees in many schools, bringing people from the communities, helping children to read, taking the reading material and giving it to at the home of the child who has not come, reaching out to parents to send their child to school. So all kinds of support started pouring. Whereas earlier school would isolate itself, that we are here in institution, we are very serious, don't interfere with our work. So interference was replaced with partnership.
Yes.
And again, I would not say that this all happened in a day, or it was without its own challenge. There were challenges, there were questions. I mean, why are we allowing this? There are outsiders coming, there are political interference. But anything, when you will open your space, there would be different kind of people. It is not possible that everyone who has come will come with a golden heart. But just because there are 2-3 people who have certain other vested interest, or whose heart is not in the right place, we cannot discard the 97% people who come and genuinely want to help.
Yes. Yeah, and every parent is vested in improving their own
Absolutely.
child's education.
Absolutely.
And like the grandmother is able to test the ability of her child to read.
Right.
But thank you, Shailendra. Thank you for coming today. I really enjoyed our conversation, around your career choices of being in the same organization but doing something new every other year. Your seamless transition to work with the government, given the experiences that you had built up, when the opportunity sort of came. Thanks for decoding a lot of the initiatives of the government of Delhi, the choices behind the functional as well as the structural, to be able to take people from within the system, nurture them to be able to have an amplified impact outside of their classrooms. And also in terms of the choices made towards enlisting parents as part of SMCs. And finally, like, how does one take into account that even when students come from a homogeneous background, have very different learning abilities, learning styles, a very heterogeneous learning system, and taking advantage of the fact that when you group them in similar pieces and aid them with material that is closer to what their current knowledge system is, it can improve learning from there. So that was very special. Thank you so much for joining, and I wish you the very best for the next 7 years of Delhi government school education. Thank you, Shailendra.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Pleasure
joining
talking
us.
to you.
Likewise.